Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me? All right, very good. Well, thank y'all all for being here in the room here at the Sam Street building, our DeKalb County Planning and Sustainability headquarters. Hopefully you walked by the one-stop shop when you came in. That's our new system to really help all of our permitters, planners, engineers have a place where they can go to a physical location, meet with the planning and sustainability team, and make the magic happen of economic development and growth in DeKalb County. And of course, it's one of our newest buildings in the sense that we put complete rehab in here. This is the old DFAX building kind of falling apart. So welcome if you haven't been here before. My name is Commissioner Ted Terry. I'm the Super District 6 Commissioner here in DeKalb County. We have some folks joining online, so hello online as well, and we might take some questions from them. We'll give priority to the folks who are in the room. Thank y'all for coming out. But we have a very exciting presentation this evening, and I'm sure in the invitation you got kind of a glimpse of what we're talking about tonight, so I won't belabor that too much, but only to say that the work that DeKalb County has before us is multifaceted and is going to take a lot of time and energy. And we're getting very close to the stage when we talk about economic development, housing, zoning, the future of DeKalb County and how we grow. We need y'all at the table. We need more residents, citizens, stakeholders to be at the table starting right now. So y'all being here is a great first step. Just to give you a little bit of a preview, we have several things that the county is undertaking. First off, we are going to be launching our zoning update, our zoning review and update next year. It's probably going to take 2 years to do. A lot of meetings, a lot of assessments, a lot more meetings. And so this is going to be the time for y'all and your neighbors, business owners, anyone that lives, works, or plays in DeKalb County. This is going to be the opportunity to really look at the future of DeKalb County when it comes to our land use and zoning. Okay. Now, simultaneously with that, we are going to be launching a DeKalb housing plan. And this is going to be a very comprehensive strategy. Again, probably going to take 2 years to do, but we're hopefully going to launch it by January, February of next year. On top of that, my office has been working with Mr. Greg Ramsey. Greg, raise your hand there. And Farmer D. We're also developing what we've called the Village Conservation Development concept and eventually ordinance. Again, a lot of this ties in together, housing, but also sustainability, good development, sustainable development, but also recognizing that the last little bits of undeveloped land in DeKalb County are being targeted for development. Clear-cut forest, cookie cutter, boxes on a hillside, and what kind of value is that actually bringing to our community, to our tax digests? We don't want, in my opinion, we don't want to just build X number of units and say we've accomplished our housing goal. When we talk about building and developing DeKalb County, we need to talk about community building. We need to talk about building neighborhoods and community cohesion. We want to do it in a way that respects our elders. We want to see intergenerational, and we want to see sustainable design. We want to see good stormwater practices. We want to see opportunities to grow food for community connection. And again, intergenerational, bringing our elders, our young people, and everyone in between together in a built environment. One of the things I think that Joe and Urban 3, and we're so excited that Urban 3 has partnered with us for this presentation. We look forward to working with them, continuing the work in 2025 as we have these discussions. We wanted to bring Urban 3 in because they really are the experts and really on the leading edge, helping communities all over the country, maybe the world, I'm not sure. Maybe you're global, Joe, but if not soon, really helping communities ask this question about the future of land development, land use, but also equitable tax structures, ensuring that those who are the least of these in our community are not being penalized by a system that might benefit the wealthier or the more connected. And just to throw out a stat for you, based on the last community development survey, DeKalb County is approximately 20% below the poverty level, at or below poverty level. Okay, so 20% of 700 and almost 50,000 residents are at or below the poverty level. Some of those are seniors, some of those are young people. In fact, actually, CBS News just published a report today. There are approximately 500 children living in extended stay hotels in DeKalb County, just basically don't have any other place to go. They're not homeless on the street, but they're homeless based on federal standards because they are in an unstable and a temporary housing situation. So when we think about the school to prison pipeline, when we think about our young people who are living in poverty, we have to keep an eye on how we create equitable tax structures, equitable development that ensures that the future growth of DeKalb County doesn't leave those individuals behind. It doesn't push out our legacy residents. And so this is a little entree. Joe's going to give you a kind of a little high level view. Hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers, because when I got this presentation about a month ago, I had like 50 questions. And so hopefully y'all will have some as well. But I really just want to appreciate each and every one for being here this evening. A quick shout out to Miranda Rupke, who is on my staff. Say hello, Miranda. So if anyone has any questions or kind of like follow-up, like a deeper follow-up, we need to meet and have more discussions, talk to Miranda. Also want to give a shout out to our planning and sustainability staff. Everyone raise your hand. Yvonne, all right, she's here. And then anyone on the Zoom there, or the Teams. Sorry, we're on Teams today. That's our Zoom version. And then we got Mr. Rodney Reese with Facilities Department. Thank you, Rodney, for helping facilitate all of the setup and everything. And then Miss Beth Ganga from Commissioner Michelle Long Spears' office, District 2, is here as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and let's give him a round of applause. And thank you for coming in from Asheville, North Carolina. Thanks, Joe.
So I also have to give a shout out to one of my colleagues, Brooke Robinson's here, and she's also a DeKalb County resident and taxpayer. So she's operating in 2 seats today. She's helped create this show, and you'll see the love of her work in here. But I've also given her carte blanche to ask me tough taxpayer questions at the end. So she's a neighbor of yours. And also, I want to just, before I start, I am from Asheville. I'm just going to say it's as devastating as it looks up there. I'm sort of a refugee right now. I'm living in Greensboro, and our whole office has moved out. We're going to be facing probably 3 weeks without water. And the thing that really bothers me amongst all of the destruction is that we lived through this in 20 years ago. 2004, we had the exact same flood. And it's kind of heart-wrenching to see the pictures of the pipes going in, and they're replacing the pipes, but they're replacing the pipes that we put in 20 years ago because of the failure 20 years ago. So are we not going to have the same problem when the rivers scour out those pipes again? I mean, literally, the rivers dug down 25 feet and pulled out the pipes. So we're mobilizing, our team is pulling together an effort to try to have a more long, sustainable view of this. And is it cheaper to move the pipes rather than just keep on rebuilding them every 20 years? So as you talk about sustainability in your community, it does matter. You will have climate disasters similar to what Asheville had. We're not going to be able to escape these going forward. So just take this seriously. And this work that I'm going to show you, just view it like you would look at an X-ray when you go to look at a broken bone or something. It's just a different way to see things. So again, I'm from Asheville. This is downtown Asheville from the 1980s, 1990s. Do y'all remember this Asheville? Did you ever visit this one? We were flat on our face, and we had this attitude back then that we weren't urban. We weren't like Charleston. We weren't a place that anybody would want to care about. We just kind of gave up. We're just sort of mountain people up here. And I worked for Julian Price's company. Julian was a philanthropist who inherited a bunch of money and put his wealth into a revolving fund to fix buildings and start businesses. So what we're doing, though, is talking with our citizens about why does it matter for us to do real estate development and fix downtown? What does it matter for y'all? So we're essentially all shareholders in a corporation. So we may be a real estate development company, but we're a shareholder in this corporation with you all. And if you look up in Oxford American Dictionary, it says to incorporate means to constitute a city, a company, or other organization as a legal corporation. So by law, you're basically a big, large social corporation called DeKalb County, sitting in this other corporation called the state of Georgia, sitting in this other corporation called the United States of America. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert show. The United States is the largest corporation in the world. I'm such a nerd, I looked it up. That's the US code on the bottom of the slide that lists our government as a federal corporation. And that's the facts of how we have to operate. So we should understand the cash flow of how this works. We should understand how we pay for government and how we run this place, right? And it's on us to run this thing. So we have a member of the board of directors with us, actually several representatives from the board of directors here. They have a fiduciary responsible, where they're fiduciarily responsible for how this machine operates. My city is $14 billion of taxable value, which is 7 times the value of Ted Turner. Have to use one of your heroes. Does Ted Turner just look at Facebook and just hear who's complains and just kind of moves on and makes business decisions that way? Of course not. He's looking at data. He's going to see what's going on, what's actually turning ads and which aren't, because he's got to run a business. So what's DeKalb County worth? What's your county worth as a corporation? So bear this in mind. My county is worth $35 billion of taxable value. So, and I don't know if y'all know this, the state legislature loves Asheville. My city is the only city in the state that is not allowed to annex land, thanks to our state legislature. So those acres are all that we have, right? If that's your widget, if that's what your product is, at DeKalb County, you can't go annex Fulton County, could you? No. Atlanta may annex its way into you, but you can't annex another county. So that land unit is what your product is. When you talk to farmers all talk in production terms. What's the crop yield per acre, the labor per acre, the water per acre? So let's look at a crop that a city grows. This is a building that we rehabbed, ground floor retail, second floor office, and then from the 4th floor up, these are all residential units. So we wouldn't have done this if the city didn't do a streetscape project. So the city enhanced the pedestrian realm and did the sidewalk, the bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree, right? Some people actually accused us of being subsidized. They're like, well, you didn't pay for that. The city did it. Okay, fair enough. We took the taxable value from $300,000 to $11 million. So what the city got, and also the county, is a 3,500% increase in taxes, right? That's the money into the coffers of the city and the county growth off that one asset, that one crop. Y'all have a 401k plan that grows by that? Go out and buy 3,500% more garbage cans. We don't care. And again, people have biases. They push back. They're like, well, Joe, that's cute. That's $11 million. We've got this Walmart over here at $20 million of values, right? So that Walmart's twice the value of our building. But I would argue that's not a fair way of looking at it, because that's a gross number, right? So of our farm, it took 34 acres of our farm to make that Walmart happen versus 0.2 acres of our farm for our building. So that's apples and oranges. Like, you shouldn't be looking at the gross number. Look at it on a per acre basis. We're producing 100 times more property taxes per acre than that Walmart, right? We're producing double the sales taxes. Who would have thought that a furniture store, a beauty salon, and a tattoo shop is double the sales taxes of Walmart? It is. Obviously more residents and more jobs. So we've kind of gotten ourselves into a sort of a trap of how we talk about real estate, because we play a certain game without asking more creative questions about what it means to us as a community, right? So I want you to realize this isn't complex math that I'm doing here. It's 5th grade division. Think of it this way. When we talk about cars, we don't talk about cars on a miles per tank basis, do we? Could you imagine how silly that sounds if I'm like, my truck gets 650 miles per tank? You're like, Joe, that's stupid. We do it on a miles per gallon because all tanks are different sizes. And instead, we should be celebrating the BMW Isetta at 70 miles per gallon. That's the most efficient vehicle. Sorry to the Prius owners. It's also the most dangerous. Like, if you have a head-on collision in this thing, you're done. You're toast. But I'm making a joke here. It's just showing you, don't get into a trap of how you talk about things. Ask more creative questions about it. So we've done this all across the country. For every dollar of county taxes, somebody out in the county unincorporated area pays to the county in single family taxes, their brother or sister inside the city in the same county. So think of unincorporated versus Decatur, is paying 5 times the county taxes to the same county per acre. This is the Walmart. This is the mall. That's a 2-story building, a 3-story building, and a 6-story building. So it's all under the high-rise code. And this is true of Driggs, Idaho, um, downtown Durham, Decatur, or Dallas. As you start stacking your stories and you mix your uses, it becomes more and more potent, right? Um, just so you know, a lot of people, when I first started doing this stuff, you've seen a couple of references to Walmart. Here's one here. I put them in here because everybody's got one. It's sort of like a genetic typology that everybody's got. And people are like, dude, you just hate Walmart. And I'm like, where did you get that? So just to tell you, like, I actually presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers Conference in Sacramento. And it's the squarest conference I've ever been to. Is anybody from the assessors organization here? Anybody hang out with assessors? Not the most dynamic group in the place. It makes the planning conference feel like Burning Man. It's like really, really dry. But this guy gets up at 8:30 in the morning and did this amazing presentation on how cheap Walmarts are. I'm in the back of the room watching this go down. He's got 3,000 assessors in one meeting. That's incredibly efficient. He's getting all of his property taxes lowered for the entire United States, lowered down in one meeting. If you have a property tax system that's based on value, there's a perverse incentive to build junk in your community, period. The cheaper the building I make, the lower the taxes. It has nothing to do with consumption. The average Walmart consumes more in police services than it pays in property taxes. Did y'all know that? I mean, you may, we have an officer in the room, but it's just, we're actually paying to police these things. And as long as you're conscious to that, great. Don't hate the player, hate the game. So I went up to the microphone and I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he shot back 20 years. We designed the building to depreciate as fast as possible. And if it goes dark, we'll just build another building to depreciate it down again. We don't care about the buildings, they're throwaway. So it's incredibly consumptive in your environment to waste all of that land and all of those resources, and it's incentivized in the system. So this is your corporation. That's 20 years. That's the life cycle of a cat. Is that okay with you to have? It's a joke. I'm a dog person. Sorry, you can laugh. This is their commitment in your corporation. And I'm sure you're all thinking about your kids, your grandkids, the longevity of your place. You're not looking at a 15-year window. So just be aware that this is perfectly legal. Oh, by the way, I'll have this whole image, this whole show as a PowerPoint so you can have it. You don't need to worry about pictures. So, in our office, we argue that people don't see this stuff because it's just not presented in a way that's visual. Brooke and I are very visual people. 65% of every audience is visual. We just learn with our eyes. So how do you show people what's going on? And just think about other technology. I can show you your brain with your brainstem activity in blue versus your creative thought process in green, right? I can show you what's going on inside your head. And it's not mysticism, it's just science, right? So can I do an economic MRI of your place? This is my county, 350 square miles. So we have Mount Mitchell Park right here. That's Mount Mitchell, the highest mountain east of the Mississippi, part of the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's gray because it's non-taxable. I've got green is low value. So this is Big Ivy up here. It's very low value. And purple is high value. So this big purple splotch right there is the Biltmore Estate. That one house is worth $100 million. Y'all have a $100 million house in your community? No. But you also don't have a house that's 180,000 square feet sitting on 8,000 acres of land. That's like the biggest gas tank you could imagine, right? But when the Cecil family shows up and talks in our community, we all genuflect and thank them for their time. They're very powerful people, but it's really not representative of their potency. So on a per acre basis, there's the map. Let me just put it in 3D. So here's the Biltmore Estate down here. Not really that potent. We can see, and I was on the downtown board when our state representative called us a cesspool of sin. It's super awesome. I mean, seriously, he did that. And it's because I've got 2 voters out in the county for every 1 voter in the city. So from a political standpoint, my city will never win in the political dynamics of any of that. So I put this map out there and I asked the audience, and the county was there. And I said, can y'all tell me where downtown is? And the chair of the county commission goes, it's that big purple mountain. I'm like, yes, sir. So if we're all paying 6 mills across this county, we're all county taxpayers, where's the county getting all of its money? The cesspool in the center of town, right? So don't hate on us. Send us a box of chocolates every once in a while. We're glad to send that money out to the county, but just understand how we're all in this together. Let's just work together. For folks out here in Fairview, they honestly don't know. So communicate across the county, talk to each other. We can also see Black Mountain over here. Black Mountain's 13,000 people. You can see it's downtown popping up right there. The tallest building in downtown Black Mountain is like 3 stories tall. So you don't have to be big to be potent. You don't have to, these aren't skyscrapers. Y'all have been to downtown Asheville. So this is the potency. So for y'all, we've done, we call it just grab some sites around, just poke around, grab some buildings to show you some examples. But first, let's start with your tax system. So every state has a different tax system. In North Carolina, ours is really simple. Our market rate should equal the taxable rate. There's exemptions if you're a disabled veteran or something like that. And then the only thing that we get to control locally is the mill rate. For y'all, you have this kind of quirk in Georgia where you take this haircut and you're only taxing on 40%. And then you still have the exemptions, and then you get your taxable value and you play with it. This is what you can control locally. It's it's just a game with the numbers. You're really being taxed the same we are. There's just a perception you're being taxed less because of that 40% haircut. Um, the average house here is going to be paying $2,000 the same way the average house in Asheville is going to be paying 2,000, or Buncombe County is paying $2,000. But here's how your money gets split in the unincorporated area. About 52% of your tax bill goes to school operations and 48% goes to the county. And of that breakdown that goes to the county, this is where it goes inside the county's budget. 44 cents of that dollar on this side is going, or 44% really, is going to the general operations. Here's the police, fire, and it kind of works its way down. And then you're also paying for bonds. Paying for bonds is you're paying back the money plus the interest. So you're essentially buying money at a percentage rate to pay for that. It's like a credit card. To look at the city of Lithonia, this is where the money goes. 49% of that goes to the schools. This goes to the county, and this goes to the city. So a citizen in Lithonia is paying more to the county than the town itself, and way more, double to the school. That makes sense? So when we say my tax dollars are high, a large portion of that is going into the school system. The school is essentially a third government, if you will. So for commercial and residential property, if they both start out at $750,000 a pop, take that 40% haircut, that gets you down to $300,000 of assessed value. You can't get any exemptions as commercial property owners. There's no homestead exemption, no nothing. They're paying 100% freight compared to residential. And so just be aware of that. The exemptions can vary. So that knocks the value down to 290, or the tax bill would be a difference from $1,200 down to like $1,100. So just be aware that residents oftentimes aren't aware of the freight that we put onto the commercial property owners. And it really comes down to voting. The commercial property owners oftentimes aren't residents in the county, so they're just not voting, and they don't have voting stake. Voters tend to vote for loopholes for themselves. This is your budget. This is where your money comes from. The majority of it's property taxes. What's great about that is it's a direct connection to land use, right? How you zone things and how you use land is going to be turning the money out from a taxable standpoint. This is where it gets spent. It's similar to that dollar bill that we saw earlier. So you're producing about $1 billion in revenue and it's spending about $1 billion. This is just a different way of looking at it. Again, we're visual people. Pie chart, or this is called a sand key chart, but this is the money coming in. A huge part of that is property taxes, goes into the general fund, and then gets distributed. You have some splost money, sales tax, optional sales tax that comes in and goes forward. What you see here with the gap, these go into the reserve fund that gets folded into the oncoming years, and some of that is slush fund from the previous year. If I'm getting that right, Brooke. Yeah. So that's going towards your debt service right now. So that money is going to previous bonds that you've taken out, about $148 million. When people say we want to bond something like these road projects and everything, you got to pay for it. It's not free. So what you end up doing is, if you don't have that money in your account, you have to buy it from a bond company, and it still comes with an interest rate attached to it. Sometimes debt is good. I ended up paying for college myself, but I took down debt to pay for that college, right? I invested in myself to grow forward. My house is the same thing. So just be careful about, if you take down bond projects, are you getting a return on that investment? Okay, so land use types. Everybody's got a Walmart. You've got a bunch of them. Your Walmarts are sort of all over the place. You've got a Walmart that's 700,000 an acre. And then you've got a Walmart that's $2 million an acre. So really what it comes down to is how much parking did they put down? Parking dilutes the value of everything. It's nice to say I want parking, but just be aware that you're picking up a lot of stormwater costs with that, and it's not paying taxes on top of it because it's just not worth anything. So that's why this one is so much less productive than that one. So parking can dilute value. Your residential properties, this is a chart we like to use from Opticos. It focuses on the missing middle. But basically housing tends to start as low density residential. And then there's all of this stuff in the middle that we've kind of zoned out of existence. You have some of it in town. If you go around downtown Decatur, you'll see townhouses, small apartment buildings. This used to be commonplace in the 1920s. If you take Ponce into the city, you'll see all these typologies that usually follow the streetcars. And then you have the big stuff, the high density stuff that you see just down the street here. So grabbing some of those, your single family low density, Brooke just went around like a heat seeking missile and grabbed a bunch of them just so you could see the span of these from 700,000, so about the value of your low end Walmart, up to as high as 5.1 million an acre in Lake Claire. But generally, is that your house? Okay. But yeah, well, hang on. So generally they're about $1 million to $2 million per acre across. And again, your county is so big, it's just going to be selected across. Duplexes, 200,000 up to 11 million. So this thing is twice the value of that house in Lake Claire, right? Would you have thought that this building is twice the potency? This is 11 million an acre, right? If you had an acre of that, it would be $11 million of value. If you had an acre of this house with the red roof, it's only 5 million. So that means this building is twice as productive as the other one. People have a bias where they're like, well, duplexes or apartments, they bring down value. And it's like, well, show me the numbers and let me know if that's really happening, because it doesn't look that way here. So these are triplexes, 2 million, 2.4 million, 2.8 million, 3.7 million. These are cottage clusters, 3.1 million, 5.2 million. This is more potent than that house in Lake Claire. So we have the aerial of that one. So this one's on its way. It's brand new, so it hasn't been run through the assessment system yet, but you might want to pay attention to that. And again, it's as you talk about these things as places to live and placemaking, make sure you're aware of the costs and values of these. Townhouses, 2 million, 8.6 million, 11.3 million for these. And again, I'm not judging the architecture. There's things that can be improved in all of these, but it's just being aware of the potency of these. You could easily do an alley behind these and shift the cars out of the front, so you have a little bit better neighborhood aesthetic. 1.5 million, 2 million, 2 million, 2.3 million, 2.7 million as you get into multifamily. And then there's the bigger stuff, multifamily, 4 million, 6 million, 6.1 million, and 17 million an acre at the high end of the scale over here. Obviously it comes down to the more stuff you put on a site, the more value it's going to have. Or conversely, the less I use a site, the less taxes I pay. Ma'am? Well, again, like I said, I'm trained as an architect. I just want you to have numbers, then have that conversation about human scale. Oh, I got, well, I also think that this design is a little inhuman if you look at it too. So there's things that you can change in architecture. It's the typology of building and the scale on the site. Architecture is fairly easy to change in a design phase. It's hard to change once it's built. So have standards about walkability, where the doors are placed. I mean, there's things you can do from a zoning perspective as a design guideline. This isn't that conversation. This is more about massing and scale and value. So commercial properties, this is the gallery at South DeKalb at $300,000 an acre. So the Walmart is actually twice as potent as this thing. This one is 800,000. So this is just a nudge more than the Walmart in value. Or to look at it another way, let's go back for a second. This duplex, so everybody take a picture of this in your head, 11 million an acre for that versus 800,000 right there. So again, how you use your land is going to directly affect your pocketbook. This North DeKalb Mall is currently going through this process. These are the number of units. We didn't get into the details of this because I understand that there's a negotiation that happened from a tax perspective. I don't know if it's a tax increment that will be vaporized after a while. So if that's a 15-year tax increment, great. This is going to still be here more than 15 years. And then it's going to dump onto your market a lot of value. Let- let's get into that later because I'm going to get through some cost sides. So yeah. Could you speak up? I can't hear you from there. Well, let's go back to that. But ma'am,
And our numbers are very diverse.
yeah. Well, okay, how about this? Because I'm going to answer those questions. I'm going to answer your questions. I'm going to probably answer your questions. Let me just get through the show and then get to this and just let me be perfectly clear about these numbers. I'm not making anything up. We're taking the value of these properties that your assessor puts into the ground and dividing them by the acres. That's it. There's no magic here. I'm not passing judgment. If you ask me, architect. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, could, 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 okay, put a pin in that and ask me about redlining in the tax system during Q&A. Got a whole bit on that. All right. This is just grabbing your properties. This was a very light study. This is like when you go to the doctors and you get that knee test and they hit your knee and your knee moves. That's it. I'm not doing, you're asking me about the history of inequity and racial bias policies, the tax system. I'll get into it. I'll get into it. I want to. Well, okay. Well, but again, I'm looking at a whole county. I'm looking at something, the land area, like that's an immense area. I can't call this a monochrome. There's different towns, there's different areas, how close you are to Atlanta versus how far away you are. There's lots of things that go on here. There's racial context of which cities were doing what. There's lots of layering. I'm not going to make this simplistic. This is way deeper than I'm presenting right now. I hear you. But this is just the numbers that are out there. So here's your $700,000 for Lowe's, or sorry, for Home Depot. It's it's double that for a Lowe's. And a lot of this is probably the size of the property when it was built. The Lowe's is probably more new. Your Leedy is 2.3 million. 800,000 for the North DeKalb Square. The shops at Dunwoody are 1.7. Plaza Fiesta. And again, maybe the reaction is, did you know that the Plaza Fiesta at Chamblee is more potent than the shops at Dunwoody? I don't know. I mean, this is your community. I'm just showing you the data, right? Toco Hills Promenade is at 3.7 million, probably because you have some two-story buildings in here and it's also a small parking lot and where the market is, where it is in your community. This is Oak Cliff at 1.3 million. The Koreatown is at 1.4 million. And then In-Town Plaza is 2.9 million. You know, you could look at this and say 2.9 million and this thing's 3.7 million. How is this more potent than this? I don't know. That's the next level of interrogation. Is it the location? Is it a gaffe in the assessment? I don't know. David's Produce at 800,000. So now we're getting into small scale commercial. This is a vacant building that's pulling 900,000. This is actually more potent than a Walmart right there. 1.4 million for Vintage Books. Molasses Beauty and Barber is 1.8 million per acre. By the way, one of my favorites is the Caribbean Chicken Shack. Y'all know 3 million an acre for the Caribbean chicken. Killing it. You need more Caribbean chicken. Well, it doesn't matter. Again, this is your cash flow, right? Don't pass your judgment on architecture, what's going on in there. It doesn't matter. Those folks are paying a tremendous amount of taxes to your community for that little building, right? $3 million an acre is potent. That's more than single family housing. 7 million an acre for Papa's. Papa's Corns. Angie's Place is 3.3 million. And then let's get into some of your towns, your main streets. Now you start to see it kick up. For again, as you're getting that main street environment, you're stacking those stories. 4 million, 2 million, 2 million. This is for the Lithonia, the main street. Part of this is these are examples that your great grandparents have built these communities around your community and you've grown. But have you grown things like this that have longevity and wealth that can keep on giving you this stuff for more than 15 years? These folks weren't thinking in a 15-year window. They were thinking much longer than that. And this is what you get to celebrate. It's still $4 million an acre. Correct. Correct. Well, well, we'll get to that. There's some that have parking in the back. It's gonna depend on the building. But you're right. They don't have a field of parking that's diluting their value. It's different in every place. It's going to be, this one's all on-street parking. But again, it's as you mandate parking, you're mandating that dilution, right? Somehow these properties have been able to make it through time with a limited amount of parking and parking access because of the environment and place that they're built in. That people can walk there, you can park down the street, you can park on the street, but the pedestrian realm will take you around. That doesn't work in suburbia. So there's a trade-off in the suburban environment. It's easier to park, but you're also paying for it with a reduced tax rate or tax production, if that makes sense. So this is Kirkwood. Could I finish? Could I finish? Well, again, as a downtown director, what we asked for is a more coordinating planning schedule. That's what the malls do. The malls act as a manager. If you're doing a proper Main Streets program, which you should be doing in these places, you want to have somebody coordinating the whole couple block area. Usually about a quarter mile is what you're looking for, but you should have Main Street programs in these places, right? Well, that's again something you should encourage. That would help these towns out because it would help with the planning of the parking. That's like a no-brainer. Main Streets programs have been around since the 1980s, and a lot of cities have actually regenerated because of that. It's a 4-point principle: aesthetics, walkability, economic coordination, and development. And you want to do some events like social events, street parties, things like that. And that doesn't necessarily just apply to Main Street. That works for neighborhoods too. So it's a good way that you want to have neighborhood organizations. You have some coordination. It can't just be going up to the county and asking to solve all the problems. Some of this is on ourselves and our communities. So this is 5.2 million an acre here. This one right here, and now we're in Stone Mountain. This one's 6 million an acre, 7 million an acre, 1.3. So again, you see that diversity in value, but you also see what I'm trying to make as a point here is that longevity that these buildings are more than 15-year buildings producing that kind of potency. They come with other issues. You've got to coordinate parking. Okay, that's something y'all can do. So even here, this is what we're talking about with, notice the value difference here. We've got 1.9 and 1.5 here in Clarkston. And over here, these two are a lot less value. Well, if you look at the site plan above here, this is an aerial that Brooke took. And we couldn't resist, Commissioner, sorry, but we gave, it's basically a haircut. If you just cut the back of those parcels off or maybe do a different thing back here, that would actually bring the value of these up. So taking a haircut actually adds value to you. You know that you've got that experience. So it works that way with value per acre as well. Sorry, we couldn't resist. So mixed use buildings, now we're at 8.6 million, 9.2, 16. And again, these are huge buildings. These don't belong everywhere, but in downtown Decatur, they're there. It's 17 million and 36 million. So there is a message here. Productivity comes from density, and that density is often a scary word for folks. I'll get to that in a second, but it's just make sure you're cautious about design with density, right? So I'll get to that in a second. So you have a Waffle House, it's been here since the 60s. So Brooke's taken these pictures, but also we've looked at what's their longevity in your community. So this thing's the museum's pulling 1.7 million of value per acre. This is a photo of buildings that predate the 60s, but the photos from the 60s, and it's still pulling 1.5 million and 2 million an acre for this block. So that's, again, the Walmart is 1.7. So this building right here is twice the potency of a Walmart, and this is about 3 times the potency of a Walmart. And it's just from an apples to apples standpoint. This is a shot from Chamblee, and here's where it is today: 5.6, 7.6, and 2.2 in the same area. And this isn't even the hot section of Chamblee that's already seen its revitalization. It's still potent, probably because of the access to the transit system. And again, old buildings, and the value at 4.8 million for the over in Avondale. This building, this little corner right here is about 10 million an acre for that. And also, we know that there's a conversation about adding some folks to Stone Mountain. We want to, if you're going to do 3 folks on the left, you should do 3 folks on the right. So we support that. We just think you should add Donald Glover or somebody to this. It's a joke. We couldn't, Brooks from here, we couldn't resist. We want to support that. So just to, they could be women too. I mean, we could amend that. It's, we'll spend more time if you want. On the left, that's the footprint of that building. And it's about $72 million of total value. And on the right is the footprint of your county that the Home Depot took, right? So that's only $10 million. So you could literally chop that building down to just this little piece of it, and it would be equal to that 10 million. Does that make sense? So again, it's a $72 million property and a way smaller parcel of land than this. How you use your land has a direct effect on your pocketbook. So this is we call this a Brady Bunch slide, but this is basically everything that you just saw. We're just going to break it down into a gridded chart. Residential, low density, medium density, high density; commercial, low density, medium density, high density; mixed use, low, medium, and high. And basically you can see the sticker prices of production along here. And again, as you lower your density and lower your footprint of your building, you lower your value, is the lesson there. So this is how it stacks up, if you will. Again, we'll have this as a PDF so you can study this. I know that I'm flying through the show with a lot of material here. So back to your county, we had done an analysis over in Atlanta, so we went ahead and just kind of spilled in y'all and kind of modeled it. But this is your county. This is the unincorporated area. So removing the cities and towns out, this is just kind of an ooze of unincorporated area. And these are just where those cities and towns are located in your community. But here's your county as a value per acre model. You can clearly see where downtown Decatur is here. And then there's an area of spill at the north part of Fulton County, or the mid part of Fulton County, that kind of squeaks in here. But yeah, this is kind of how your model is, and this is the unincorporated area. So even inside the unincorporated area, you can see there's some value spots that are happening. So how do you add structure around that? Conversely, how do you talk with towns about the what's going on inside them as well? So inside Decatur, where can they use this to make better decisions as well? So this is we just made these models so you could see it. These are the properties that kind of pop up high. Even the Ivana North apartments show up quite well here. And then you can see the Kingsbrook Boulevard townhouses down here popping up, and they're way out there doing all right. So, okay, somebody had mentioned density. I'm just going to turn the clock back a little bit. In 2013, I was asked to do a project in Gwinnett County. So if y'all could imagine, it was an evening presentation at a Chamber of Commerce, 2013. I'm doing a presentation, and I really didn't even know Lawrenceville. I'm from Asheville. Gwinnett County was big to me. And I'm not making this up. The community told me that I wasn't allowed to say 4 words when I made that presentation that night. I'm not making this up. They said I couldn't say the word urban, city, town, or municipal in my presentation. And I said, why? And they're like, well, we're rural people in Gwinnett County. We're not big city people. We're not in the perimeter. We're not those people. I'm like, what do you do when your company's called Urban 3 and you can't say the word urban? Are we just 3? Anyway, I played along with it, because I'm a consultant. I'm just like, whatever. And when I was talking with my client, I was like, Kelly, y'all are 812,000 people out here. And she goes, yeah, but honey, look, we're outside the perimeter. We're 460 square miles. All right. So if you divide 460 square miles into 812,000 people, that's 1,900 people per square mile, right? That's density. Okay. Y'all are more dense than they are or were in 2013. So we had all of this other data. So I just put it out there for them. I'm like, look, check this out. You're 600 or 200 people per square mile denser than Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. What's in Mecklenburg? Yeah, I've heard of Charlotte. This is Davidson, Tennessee. That's where Nashville is. You're 600 people denser than Nashville. Both of these places have a professional football team. There's no such thing as the Buford Cowboys, is there? But somehow you're denser. Again, when we have biases, how we make choices, and they convince themselves that they were rural. They convinced themselves that they were country. And then they just built something. And they didn't build country. This is Austin, Texas. They're double the density of Austin. That's Raleigh, Asheville, that's Chapel Hill. This is what rural looks like. What the heck did you all do with your model? So as we were doing their model, I asked Josh, I'm like, could you turn it on its side? And he did. It looks like a 1970s shag carpet. It's like the same thing from end to end. They've built the entire county into a monoform of development. And they got what they asked for, which is no design. So here's what we typically see. We can see Chapel Hill, Carborough, and Hillsborough. I can see the Purple Mountains popping up in each of those places. How the heck did y'all do this? And they were stunned. So the most potent building in all of Gwinnett County right now is that thing at $8 million an acre. Now, they may have done something new since then, but that was it. And they were stunned. So just to kind of rub it in a little bit, we put Davidson County, which is Nashville, Travis County, which is Austin, and Gwinnett County, and we turned them on its side so you could see them. We did an economic heart monitor to pulse them out. And there you go. So they're peaking out at 192 million in Nashville. The less dense Austin is peaking out at 476, and Gwinnett County is peaking out at 8 million. One of the county commissioners just started arguing with me that night. And she's like, but we're not urban. And I said, ma'am, I never used that word in the entire presentation. You have all of this horizontal infrastructure, the same as Travis County, and none of the vertical stuff to pay for it. Are y'all broke yet? And she goes, oh, yeah, we're broke. We can't afford things. There you have it. Again, they thought they were doing one thing. They thought they were rural, but what they were actually building was a form of development that really isn't all that productive. These are choices. By saying no to one thing, you're saying yes to something else, right? So flash forward 3 years, I presented this in Johns Creek, and they were all laughing at Gwinnett County when I presented this, which was super awesome. So here's Fulton County. This is Johns Creek up there. Y'all see it? So we went ahead and just dropped Gwinnett County in next to it. And I said, so how are you any different from Gwinnett County? They basically did the exact same thing. Now, here's the scary thing. Johns Creek is 83,000 people. Asheville is 87,000 people. They're pretty much the exact population of Asheville. Also, almost the same area. But check this out. Johns Creek is 2,600 people per square mile versus Asheville at 2,000. So they're actually denser than Asheville. Y'all have been to Asheville. You've come to our downtown. Have you been to downtown Johns Creek and strolled around and gotten a coffee there or a beer? Their top value of their model, they peak out at let's call it, I'll give them a gift and call it 7 million an acre. We're at 47 million an acre. The total value of our city is 14 billion versus their 10. So we have $4 billion more wealth than they do and less density. That all make sense? So again, Johns Creek would have never thought of themselves as a city as big as Asheville, yet they're bigger, you know? So anyway, there's other communities I'd recommend going to look at. There's over in Newton County, there's Clark's Grove is doing a little development. This is their downtown right here, and they did a little new urbanist development right nearby. That's actually, pulling pretty good value at 4 million or 11 million. And this is little village stuff. You don't have to add big things to add value and potency. Way over here in Fulton County is this thing called Serenbe, which is pretty cool to look at. I mean, these are the buildings that you get. What's that? Again, ma'am, a lot of times things become wealthy because there's limited in supply. Okay, let me get to the end and talk about wealth. All right. This is Fulton County. This is this thing called Trilith that Dan Cathy is built, the owner of Chick-fil-A. So this little green pad over here is the Marvel Studios, and he built a village on the other side of it. This is Fayette County. This is Peachtree City right there. So Peachtree City isn't all that potent compared to this little village that they built. And seriously, go take a look at it. This is it in 2019. Here it is today. So just over the span of growing the village, adding townhouses basically, they've grown from 15 billion in the county to 23 billion. The total value of the project has gone from 48 million to 362. And that's about I want to say it's about a 150 acre development. It's not that huge. So here it is in 2019 at 48 million. Today it's about 360 million. And we're projecting when they're done, it's going to be it's going to be about 900 million or almost a billion in value. So here it is then, today, and tomorrow. Now, what's crazy about it is the potency of footprint in the county versus its financial punch in the pocketbook. This is a ratio that you want to look at. And again, this isn't going to be for everybody. This isn't that all y'all need to move into this typology of development, but there are folks in your market that want that stuff. So allow it to happen and do it in a way that can add value to other parts of your community. So this is it. These are the architecture. This is the architecture that you find in this place. And basically he designed it so that folks could live and work nearby their jobs in the studio. All sorts of different price points in here. So our recommendation is to build more towns. But okay. So your city is changing, it's dynamic. Work on your purple mountains, your grow into the future. As you look around the county, you've got examples here. How do you make more of them happen? What I find with a lot of unincorporated areas, it will grow up a population that is literally a town, but they won't make a town. Why not? How do you cultivate and coax that to go? Look for examples of productivity in other places. You have a lot of examples in Georgia. You're doing this, see how this goes, learn from it. You maybe didn't get it right, who knows? But learn and adapt and grow forward in the future. You're never going to get everything 100% perfect. Don't even aim for perfect. You wouldn't do that with yourself, right? I need to lose 20 pounds. I'm not gonna guilt myself because I had pizza last night, right? I shouldn't have had it, but I like it. But now I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do things for the next week because I had pizza this week. Just think about, we're all humans, right? Know your cost and consequences. What I've been showing you is the revenue side. This is Eugene, Oregon. Here's downtown Eugene. This is the university. This is a college town area over here. This is floating the whole city into a lake and looking at the side view and seeing the money coming out of the ground for the revenue and seeing the costs on the bottom. So this is what people are paying in taxes. This is what it costs for folks to live out there. And when you net the revenue against the subsidy, this is what you see, which is what's in the black is net positive, what's in the red is net negative. So this is a $36 billion city. And they saw themselves as a $36 billion corporation. And they're very sustainable about it. So they actually hired us to look at expanding the growth boundary. And once they saw their model and they saw how much of their property was in the red that was bleeding out, actually, if you lift this up like you're looking for a salamander under a rock, you can see that subsidy across the model. They realized they weren't using their land properly and they focused on recycling rather than adding more territory. They thought they could do a better job and they did very strategic policies. They focused on affordable housing, tax reductions or basically rebates. They lifted the impact fees and anywhere there was a bus corridor, they eliminated the impact fees. But things like that, use the data, similar to the way a doctor would use a CAT scan to do surgery. Use the data before you do your planning processes. We call this geo accounting. You want to basically put your math on a map and let it tell you what's going on and make conscious choices to subsidize the right things for your community. You will subsidize stuff. So your accountant doesn't care if you buy a boat, right? Your accountant cares if you can afford a boat. So back to y'all. I asked you what you were worth. You're worth $120 billion. You're almost 10 times the value of my city. Let that wash over you for a second. So that's if you wanted to go out and buy a team, you can liquidate yourself and buy some soccer teams if you want. The soccer team's only 900 million, so you could buy like was it 133 of those? It's a joke. I'm joking about that. But if you talk to folks inside these industries, they know with like this a sports star's towel bill is, right? I know that the cups in our nightclub cost 5 cents a pop. We have to know that stuff because we have to keep it in business. So understand what the cost of that streetscape project is or the water project and make sure that you can afford going forward to pay for that. So the other thing that you can do, we did this with Atlanta, where you could look at the assets that you hold inside your school system, inside the park system, inside different parts of government. And those are things that you can put into play to stimulate affordable housing, to stimulate business development. You actually own the land. I'm not saying get rid of all of your parks, but there's maybe a parking lot that's unnecessary somewhere that can have a better use. So in Atlanta, they have about 96 billion versus of private property. And just by putting a little bit of land to use, this little black square right there, it yielded about 15 billion of new development. If they work with other public agencies, like their county, Fulton County, your county, because a piece of them is in you. And some of those public lands are inside your county. Work with Atlanta. And if they do a taxable property in that you're going to get a return for that too. So it's just, again, it's work with folks in your community. A lot of the work that we do is captured on Strong Towns. There's a blog that you can read, and also Chuck's written about it in a book. And finally, thanks for letting me do some math. But if y'all don't mind, is it okay if I get to the tax assessment stuff? Or should you want to open it up for questions? Ma'am? Is all right? I'll get to it. Okay. So back in 2019, we were doing Kansas City, and our client was the Kauffman Foundation. They asked us to look at redlining, and y'all know redlining? Redlining was created in 1934 by our federal government as part of the New Deal program, and before 1934, mortgages were only 7 years. And then what they did is they expanded mortgages from 7 years to 30 years. But they issued an edict to every community that they had to make a map with 4 colors. Green is good investment, blue is okay investment, yellow is declining, and red was considered hazardous. You were considered hazardous by basically two main measures: your infiltration of immigrants and your measure of Black populations. Or in their language, they use the word Negro. But that's what they did from 1934 to 1968. Now, it didn't mean you couldn't get mortgages. You could, but folks that lived in red line areas had to go to predatory systems that weren't protected by the federal government. So it was a very pernicious way to steal wealth in certain communities, predominantly communities of color. So here we are 50 years after redlining stopped. And I said, look, I can see where it happened. You just cross this one street right there. And you can see east of Troost Avenue. That's Troost Avenue right there was heavily redlined. So we dropped Troost Avenue on the map, and you could see that east of Troost, it's heavily redlined. And so the indicator species that we're looking at, that when you economically hammer an individual on their property, the resulting effect is a lack of investment in their own property. So we're looking for vacant land where you lost a house, and this is you can see the high correlation of vacant land inside redline neighborhoods. And so we recommended them is that they owe that system more effort to fix this because you spent 30 years causing this problem. You better tool up and fix this. Because right now you look at the values from the green line neighborhood, the average value per acre to blue to yellow to red. I'm giving it a short shrift. It's way more frustrating and maddening because you can see where they plowed the highways through right in this image. So after you've taken individuals' wealth for 30 years and they have the cheaper real estate, that's where they ran the highways through using, again, federal dollars to take individuals' properties. And again, this is a fact that happened in community after community across our entire country, and it's a reality for people. So deal with it. That's the short end of the presentation that we did in Kansas City. While we did that in 2020, my city and my county adopted reparations, and they made national media for adopting reparations, the city and the county. So I volunteered my company. We all worked on this to do an analysis of our assessment system in our county. So we have a red line map, or had one. This is my county by race. When you zoom into the city, you see this big bubble right there that the city bends around. That bubble is the Biltmore Estate. So the Biltmore Estate and Biltmore Forest are different areas out in the county, not in the city. So what a lot of people don't realize about Biltmore Forest is a subdivision created by the Vanderbilts. So thank you for that. And across the street is Shiloh. Shiloh is 54% black. Biltmore Forest is 99% white. My friend Reggie lives in Shiloh. And at the time we did the analysis, Sydney Powell lived in Biltmore Forest. You can't make this stuff up. She's since moved to Dallas, so good riddance, enjoy. She's gone. But when we looked at their houses, now Sydney's house is nothing to write home about, right? It's just a ranch house, nothing spectacular. So there's some key metrics you want to look at to judge equity in assessment. The first thing you start with is the land value per acre, right? So her dirt is worth way more than his dirt on a per acre basis. That checks out. That seems reasonable. That seems common sense that her neighborhood should be more. But we pulled the building value per square foot, and this is the results. So I sat the assessor down and I said, look, Keith, I'm trained as an architect. Can you explain to me how his house is worth more than her house? His response was amazing. It was an unbelievable, it was laden with all these biases. He was like, well, she's got more square footage. I'm like, oh, it's like toilet paper. The more house I get, the cheaper it gets. I'm like, come on now. She's got 4 bathrooms. Reggie's got 1. That means he's paying way more county taxes per acre. But check this out. In North Carolina, we do our assessments every 4 years. So from one assessment to the next, somehow his property is double the potency of hers. And on her property card, she's renovated and he hasn't. Are you all aware that this is happening in communities all across the country? So unless you do the analysis, and so I don't know, there's and I'll pull up DeKalb in a second. The New York Times published this opinion piece from Chris Berry, who's a professor at University of Chicago. And he found that he analyzed 90% of the counties across the country, and more expensive properties were consistently undervalued, and high wealth or low wealth properties were consistently overvalued. I call these J curves. It looks like a J laying on its side, but basically here's some cities. And let's take Chicago for a second here. The bottom 10% are valued up here at about, was that 30% of value? And the top 10% are valued at about 5%. every state constitution has this uniformity clause that we should all be uniformly taxed at the same level. And what we all are is charged that at 40%, everybody gets the 40%, everybody gets the same millage rate, right? But if you change how people are valued, you see that skew. So here's an example in Asheville. This house was appraised at 190. It sold for 150. So that one is overassessed 27%. They're paying 27% more for their government than they should be. That's called an overassessment. This is a house where the computer got it right. They assessed it at 350. It sold for 350. That's called a one or on level. And then here's a house where it was appraised at 1.3 million. It sold for 2.5. So that means it's paying 50% of its taxes or undervalued, right? So that's the way the system works. We looked at our entire county from edge to edge, the poorest house to the wealthiest house, and stuck them on a line. And what you should do, it's called a longitudinal analysis, but basically you break every bucket down into 10%. So the bottom 10%, the next 10%, the next, so they're just deciles, right? This is the top 10%. And the average skew or error should be equal across the whole system. That would be uniform. This is what my county does. So we're charging or overcharging the bottom 30%, 40% of a housing and undercharging the top 60% to the tune of $1 million of overcharge in taxation and an undercharge of 6 million. So we told our county commissioners, if you want to start reparations, you should fund it. The first rule of reparations is do no harm. You're doing harm. The second rule of reparations is to create equity, find a way to balance that. And to balance this, you need to put $7 million into our reparations committee and let them make choices on what to do with that. But you owe money to folks. This is what's going on in my system. So before this talk, I went ahead and pulled y'all up. This is Dr. Barry's report from DeKalb. And you can see you're not a flat line. So the way that works out is the bottom 10% are overpaying about $500 a year, and the top 10% are underpaying about $1,200 a year. So this is worthy of, just with this data, it's worthy to dig in and do some analysis on this. And again, it's not that there's a perniciousness and the assessor maliciously going out and doing this. This is a system that was set up to continue this throughout, and it just needs to be interrogated. It's worthy of a conversation. Okay, I didn't mean to depress everybody, but thank you. Are there questions, ma'am?
Eventually, these spots are the same way as every other spot in building. That is their problem. They are going to become.
We're getting on the recording so that people on the online can hear.
Now, my neighbor was telling me that we have pigs, like these feral pigs or whatever.
Wild hogs, yeah.
The Nola Road, all the way back there to where I am. We like our quality. We don't want to be jammed. And most people just want a house. They do not want an apartment.
Well,
And it seems to keep getting these apartments, which are becoming nothing but a burden on the system. Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, was not meant to be a vertical city. It's got a water structure that anybody flushes the toilet. We get 10 people to flush the toilet, you got to. And so why are we not looking and creating communities like we used to have, single family or four family units, instead of putting these big apartment complexes, which are going to eventually be a burden on the community.
well, ma'am, you've got a lot in there. Let me try to unpack some of it. First is, you're right. You shouldn't monolithically treat, this is a big county. And you shouldn't take the same solution countywide. You're going to be doing different things in different places. And in downtown Decatur, yeah, different, it's a different typology than where you live. The reason why I pointed out Black Mountain is that that's 13,000 people in the middle of nowhere. And it's like a little 2 or 3 block downtown. If you go to, it's very similar to Stone Mountain. If you looked at it physically as a place. So you've developed how many Stone Mountain's worth of people out here in the unincorporated area, but you haven't made another Stone Mountain. You haven't made another little main street with housing around it. This is my county. Y'all should do this. This is our people. And you can see we have really poor people in my county making the household income of $10,000 a household per year, $10,000. And you can see how we've got a lot. There's like, what's that, about 4,800 folks in my community that have needs. The housing that's available for them is in this green, in the yellow side, this orange stuff. So notice, actually, I'm using my cursor. Notice how few housing pieces are available for those folks to buy. That is, I would argue that is criminal as a citizen of my community to not meet the needs of folks who have needs for housing. And the data shows it, right? Same is true for the next ring up of folks making $14,000 per household. Look at how little housing they have. Now, to be objective here, however, if you go to the wealthy side, they also have a lack of housing. So what's going on though in the marketplace, if you don't adjust or add housing, the rich people have the ability to shop down this curve. They can go to any buckets west of here and buy whatever they want. Poor folks can't shop up. And what our community is doing that's even worse, way worse than what's going on here. These are all people from outside of Asheville that are scooping up that housing stock and turning it into Airbnbs. So my staff can't afford to live in my community because I've got people, actually, I think it's like 28% of my housing stock is gobbled up by Floridians. And sorry, Georgia, 9% of Georgia people buy up housing in my community to take it off the market. But again, you need to look at this data. And I do want to call you out on all apartments cause crime and problems. It's like I've lived in apartments. I live in a duplex right now, and high density doesn't necessarily correlate and connote crime. You know, if you show me the data on that, but that's another conversation. Sir?
Yeah, just to. I don't mean you, but people sell and whole great apartment. These dogs actually don't look like apartments. They look like one of them looks like a whole large man or. That's one properties. Yes. There's actually, this is the apartment so much to be different. A lot of it has to do with the first in housing, house integrated, scale, and walkability is the key. To me, that's the clue. All these places that are that have those super high values, most of them belong to people belong to the publishing, people belong to promotion, people belong to the friends, people belong to school. Worst part about the city rural areas is saying that they're trying to protect the value by they're destroying one thing. It's a hard and to model. And that does go into you build, I think, it's fiscal community when you can form events.
Well-
That's why. So I think, unfortunately, people say apartments. Some people conjure certain images. Other people conjure very different images. So the whole concept's to it.
Sir,
I understand why you're because of the relative model for whole house and so apartments that were that's really.
sir, also, I think, and I dropped Gwinnett County in there. It's, you know, I'm from Western North Carolina. We have incredibly rural environments and people clamor and fight to keep them rural. And that's fine. You know, it's like, you should be more rural out there, but you can't pull up a drawbridge and say nobody else can move here because I'm here. You know, that's just not going to work. Their land will transact. Now, unless you make rules and regulations and say, we're going to do maybe a transfer of development rights out there. So that the farmer is going to want to sell their land at some point. Are you going to just regulate that and say, no, you can't? You know, I don't know. It's going to get complex real fast. And that's what happened up in Gwinnett County. That happens all throughout many communities. But you can, we did a project in Gilbert, Arizona, and it's called the Town of Gilbert. That community is 273,000 people. How do you solve problems in a community that large with the mindset that you're still a town? How is Gwinnett County going to solve their problems with the mindset that they're rural? Now, to their credit, that was 2013. They've changed their attitude. I've been over there 3 different times. I'm presenting there next month. They're being more proactive about building place strategically in certain areas and relieving the pressure in other areas. So if your community agrees that we're all okay with our development pattern, it's going to take a different tool set than folks in Decatur or folks somewhere else. It's not a one size fits all thing here. And also, I'll agree on the architecture thing. I'm trained as an architect. Some of these buildings drive me nuts when they come in like UFOs drop them and they don't meet the ground well. That's a conversation that needs to be had. And I challenge my own profession to this. It frustrates me that there are architects involved in this and they don't know how to design a facade, you know? It's annoying. Sir?
Rich Belichick, do a lot of conservation work on development, but also been working with Greg and Ted Terry. And what I see here, now let's go back to 1904. Henry Ford came here and ruined this country. Plain and simple, whether you like it or not. Secondly, the planners of today and the developers of today are pushing their visions on every community in the United States. So I applaud Ted and you coming in to do this. I have been going around this state for the Senate Study Committee. We have lost 2.6 million acres due to unplanned development. If we do not change this course of action for this state, we're going to lose another $750,000. So going back to your point about stormwater, no water, no soil, no farms, no food. So yes, we have to have a strategic plan. And I don't know if you've presented this information yet to the ACCG, which is your association. See,
This is the first presentation.
ACCG is your association of community of your commissions across the state. Then you have the GMA, the Georgia Municipal Association. I presented the DeKalb County Phase 2 plan to them. They want us to come in and do a complete presentation to the whole state and also the municipality association. Because again, you have planners that have not been trained. They don't do any of this analysis. A developer comes in, I've got 200 acres, I'm gonna put 5,000 houses. And that's what's wrong. So I applaud you for all of this information you're sharing. And we're just starting on the ground roots of taking the CAD plan. We already have 5 other counties in the state that want us to come in and do presentations and 15 other municipalities. So your work is great. A couple of my questions. Sears used to have multi-level stores.
Yeah.
Riches. Why does Home Depot and Lowe's have it all spread out? They don't know what elevators are,
Well,
you know?
hold on.
And they don't understand the point of blacktop increases land value. You know, so I applaud what you've done here, and I think it's going to make this state, along with DeKalb County. And I've already talked with the county manager of Newton County. They want us to come out and do a presentation. So we're the boots on the ground here. We're behind you 100%. But the worst thing that's happening to our farmland in the state of Georgia is unplanned development. And if you look at the other item, we had an HB 581 coming into this state, which would be passed November the 5th, where it's going to cap our taxes. Now, the municipality or the school system or the county can elect to opt out. If they do that, these folks will not get reelected because we're tired of taxation in this state. And so from the Gold Dome, we have a new House Bill 581 that'll be voted on, and it will pass unanimously. So I don't know if you've looked at that yet or have that information, but also the enterprise funds of your water and sewerage authorities. I mean, in Rockdale County, we have $66.5 million sitting in that fund. I don't know, I know other counties throughout the state have these enterprise funds. Are they being utilized correctly? We don't know. So that's just some of my comments. The last thing, the American dream of having a house on 1 acre. My daughter's 25 years old. She said, Dad, I don't want a 4,000 square foot house. I want 1,200 square feet. So I can see the paradigm shift also happening. So again, I like your picture up there. I grew up on a cattle farm in Northern Virginia, Manassas. There's not one cattle farm left and not one dairy farm left. It's
Yeah.
all data centers.
Well, again,
And again, man, I tell you what, it's bad in Asheville right now. 'Cause I was up there a week. So I applaud you for coming down to that. Thank you very much.
Okay, so shape of things to come. Welcome to America. You're not the only state in the country that hates taxes. So let me let you in on that. Little secret. There's a colonial barb from when we were colonies where we used to say, don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the fellow behind the tree. We're a country of tax evaders, period. We threw tea in a bay because what? It was tax higher. So every state adopts these things and it's just unbelievably dumb, but it's very popular. Who wants to pay more taxes? Anybody? Well, guess what? There should be a little drawbridge out at the front of this building where people pay to drive on every street. In Florida, you can actually rent a cow and have it wander around on your property, and it gets deemed agriculture just by renting a cow. Doesn't matter the property, just go rent a cow. Florida adopted this thing called Save Our Homes. And I'm just going to go ahead and out myself here. I graduated from the University of Miami. And that summer, I learned about this Save Our Homes amendment, and I voted for it. I was 22 years old. My first election. I was really proud of that. I had no idea what it meant. It sounded good. I'm going to vote against the property cap. Well, so they capped commercials could grow up to 10%, and then it hits a ceiling. Residential could grow at 3% or CPI, which is ever lower of the two. That sounds awesome. Well, guess what? As a renter, it didn't mean anything to me. I'm paying commercial rates. So it was actually wasn't in my best interest to vote for it, but I didn't know. So here's how it works. When you see the distortion in Florida, and blue is the market rate and red is the tax rate, they put a restriction, a lid on the pot of how value could grow. So when they went through the recession and cratered and started growing back out, the market took back off again. What happened to the red line, your tax base? It didn't grow as fast because of that restriction. So let me ask you a question about paying for stuff, paying for this road project, the pipes for your stormwater system. Is it following the blue line or the red line? The blue line. That's what you have to pay in the market to buy concrete, to buy asphalt, to buy wood. But your pocketbook is down here in the red line. So the perverse thing about this is the only way you can get revenue is you have to get more people in your community. So go ahead and vote for it. This is your community. I got my own community called Asheville. Knock yourself out and vote for it. You're never going to be able to keep up with your development patterns. Period. States have been down this road. Florida is one of them. So here's their cap rate, and here's what's going on with inflation. So last year, CPI was 7%. So the cap rate kicks in. You can only charge 3% growth in your taxes. So on homestead, which is the majority of the housing that are out there, right? Doesn't matter. It's still an economic restriction, right? So here's what's going here's what's going on with asphalt in Florida. 5% growth. Last year, asphalt went from an index of 280 to 360. So that means asphalt grew by 30% in 1 year, and your tax revenues only grew at 3%. Again, understand the economic calculus. It feels good to not pay taxes, but ultimately go talk to your commissioners and see if they can afford stuff. But a farm buy down program, there's no money for that.
Question. I did it. I submitted a concept to reduce our F-150 truck fleet by 50% because they were just riding around. You know, in 5 years, we're going to save $1 million. So the other point of all of this too is we got to take a time out and look what the county directors are spending on certain items.
Sure. I mean, look,
Efficiency.
we do these models to encourage transparency, right? We want you to see what's going on. So just continue that with everything. I'm only here to show you maps, right? So I'm not going to solve all the problems. This is for y'all. Ma'am? Okay. Okay.
So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.